Good morning. It's Donna Chase at First Presbyterian Church here in Greensboro, North Carolina. Welcome to week 4 of our summer storytime series, Let's Read About Race Together. Our hope with this series is that families will come together to read, to learn, to listen, and to act. Our hope is that by reading these children's books and the parent resource books, that we can not only learn about our history, but also have the courage to face it and work towards change. All of the books in our summer series are from a collection from the International Civil Rights Museum here in Greensboro. Our parent resources are a collection from my personal shelf at church and also some new books that I'm reading as I continue to work in this area and in my personal life as well. Today, our book is called Sit In: How 4 Friends Stood Up by Sitting Down. This is a book that was written in 2010 about the Greensboro sit-ins, but I would also encourage you, if you haven't read it, an older book that's been around quite a while here at the museum and, of course, before that, for folks to read and listen, and it's called Freedom on the Menu, the Greensboro Sit-In. So I would encourage you, if you haven't read this one, to also purchase and read this one as well. Let's get ready to read together. Sit In: How 4 Friends Stood Up by Sitting Down by Andrea Davis Pinkney, illustrated by Brian Pinkney. We must meet hate with love. These were Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s words that got them started. 4 hungry friends eager to eat. Each took a seat at the Woolworth's lunch counter in Greensboro, North Carolina. David, Joseph, Franklin, and Ezell sat quiet and still, with hearts full of hope. With Dr. King's words strong and close, they were college students with a plan. It was February 1st, 1960. They didn't need menus. Their order was simple: a donut and coffee with cream on the side. Woolworth's was busy, so the friends waited, patiently, silently, without a fuss. They were the only black kids at the counter. David, Joseph, Franklin, and Ezell sat while everyone else got served. At first, they were treated like the hole in a donut, invisible. Others tried to ignore them. The waitress watched and refused them. This was a sign of the times. Whites only. This was the law's recipe for segregation. Its instructions were pretty easy to follow. Do not combine white people with black people. Segregation was a bitter mix. Now it was the friends' turn to ignore and refuse. They ignored the law and refused to leave until they were served. Those kids had a recipe too, a new brew called integration. It was just as simple as combining black with white to make sweet justice. For them, integration was better than any chef's special. Integration was finer than homemade cake. Integration was a recipe that would take time. So David, Joseph, Franklin, and Ezell sat quiet and still with hearts full of hope and with Dr. King's words strong and close. Be loving enough to absorb evil. They sat straight and proud and waited and wanted. a donut and coffee with cream on the side. After waiting and waiting and sitting and wanting, a police officer came, but the four friends would not leave. The police officer didn't know what to do. The students were doing nothing wrong. No crime in sitting, no harm in being quiet, no danger in looking hungry. The officer left the counter without doing anything. The Woolworths man turned off the lights and announced, "We're closed." So the customers left, including the four friends. They went home to dinner, where they were served first. News had already spread about the sit-in. David, Joseph, Franklin, and Azelle got their names in the paper, and the next day, February 2nd, 1960, more students showed up at the counter. Sitting still for what was right, no reservations needed at Woolworths, the students seated themselves. They were dressed in their best clothes. They were polite and determined. No guesswork for the waitress. The young people knew the menu by heart. They ordered, but no food came. So they sat in silence and waited and wanted a donut with cream and coffee on the side. The waitress reminded them, whites only. But those kids would not budge. They didn't move until they were served. They refused. All they wanted was food, a donut and coffee with cream on the side. To pass the time, the students read their school books, wrote in their journals, finished their homework. They didn't need to read the menu, so they studied for tomorrow's test. What had started in Greensboro spread faster than a grease fire. There were lunch counter protests in Virginia, Tennessee, Alabama, and Georgia, and many other southern towns and states. If lunch counters could go from whites only to all welcome, if segregation could turn to integration, if black and white people could break bread together, everyone would pass the test. Everybody would score high, A+ with that coffee and cream on the side. But many folks were not motivated to make that grade. And as the sit-ins grew, angry people gave the students a big dose of hate, served up hot and heaping, coffee poured down their backs, milkshakes flung in their faces, pepper thrown in their eyes, ketchup, not on fries, but dumped on heads. They yelled, "We don't serve your kind. Go home. Goodbye." The students wanted to lash out, but they couldn't. They wanted to strike back, but they didn't. Sitting still was so hard. Practicing peace while others showed hate was tougher than any school test. Now there were news cameras filming the sit-ins and viewers at home watching it on TV. The students were more determined than ever to show the world the true meaning of peace. So they sat in silence, with hearts full of hope, and Dr. King's dream true and close. These were the words that kept them going. We must meet violence with nonviolence. The students sat proud and still and waited and wanted a donut and coffee with cream on the side. And soon the sit-ins grew bigger and wider. White students joined their black friends to protest the unfair treatment by restaurant owners who would not serve food to black patrons. They also opposed segregated libraries, buses, parks, and pools. With so many students gathered, people got scared that there would be fighting. They were afraid of all those youngsters grouped together for a cause. Even though the students were committed to peace, the police now took action. They accused the students of loafing. They arrested them, they took them to jail, and the students did not resist. They did not fight. Instead, they sang freedom songs to keep the peace. They held Dr. King's words steady and close. Demonstrate calm dignity. Soon folks were so busy arguing about who was right and who was wrong that they stopped going to Woolworths and other segregated places. Some shops were forced to integrate to keep their business alive, but the struggle was far from over. In April, an activist named Ella Baker organized a student leadership conference at Shaw University in Raleigh, North Carolina, to help the young demonstrators. With Ella, the students formed the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC. Inspired by Dr. King, they came up with powerful words of their own, and these are the words that became their slogan. We are all leaders. When President John F. Kennedy got a taste of SNCC's integration, he didn't sit in, he stepped in. On July 11th, 1963, the president went on TV. He urged Americans to treat each other fairly. He told the Congress to take action against segregation, and this became the Civil Rights Act of 1964. On July 2nd, 1964, President Lyndon B. Johnson made the act a law. It banned segregation in public places. The hard work and courage of those brave students paid off. They had taken a bite out of segregation. Now it was time to savor equality. Now they were ready for a big sip of freedom. Their order was simple: a double dose of peace with nonviolence on top. Hold the hate. Leave off the injustice. And old integration sure tasted good. Those courageous young people enjoyed every bit. They came back to Woolworths for seconds and thirds and for many helpings after that. When the sit-ins were all done, the students left a big tip. A donut and coffee with cream on the side is not about food. It's about pride. These were the words that filled them up. Now the students had the right recipe for integration. The steps were easy to follow. Start with love, number 1. Add conviction, number 2. Season with hope, number 3. Extra faith to flavor, number 4. Mix black people with white people, number 5. Let unity stand, number 6. Fold in change, number 7. Sprinkle with dignity, number 8. Bake until golden, number 9. Serve immediately, number 10. Makes enough for all. After weeks of sitting, when their backsides ached, after months of being still when their feet fell asleep, and after years of praying for laws to change, when they were so hungry for equality, the young people finally got what they ordered. It was worth the wait. It was served to them exactly how they wanted it. Well done. The last portion of the book is a civil rights timeline. The Greensboro sit-ins were one of many events that comprised a time in America's history known as the Civil Rights Movement, a series of happenings in which people came together to end racial discrimination. Here's a timeline of those events. A very brief overview. 54, the Supreme Court rules segregation in public schools unconstitutional with Brown versus the Board of Education. 55, Rosa Parks refuses to give up her seat on a white passenger bus in Montgomery, Alabama. 57, January and February, the LC is developed, the Christian Student Leadership's Conference by Martin Luther King. September, 9 black students in Little Rock, Arkansas enroll in a school despite being barred by the Arkansas governor. 1960, the Greensboro sit-ins begin. 61, the Freedom Rides. 62, President Kennedy sends thousands of federal troops to help drive back angry mobs at the University of Mississippi, where James Meredith is the first African-American student to register. These angry mobs, of course, were white people protesting this event. 1963, Dr. Martin Luther King writes his letter from Birmingham jail. The Children's Crusade, the book we read the first week of our series, The Youngest Marcher, was held. August 28th of 63, Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech, and in 1964, the Civil Rights Act. The last portion of the book is a historical narrative of the original Greensboro sit-ins. It is worth noting from this section that not only were the students from North Carolina A&T University, the 4 original men of the sit-in, but they were joined by others, black women, the Bennett Bells, and other white students from what is now UNCG, Guilford, and Greensboro colleges. And later in the summer, they were also joined by many high school students who were working to create change. I would encourage you as a family to read the book about the sit-in. When the International Civil Rights Museum reopens, I would encourage you to go and visit as a family if you haven't already done so. There are programs that schools participate in for a variety of ages, and there are many programs that you would be interested in participating in the International Civil Rights Museum. I would also encourage you as a family to talk about the things that you have seen that have changed or have not changed since the civil rights movement of the early 1960s. What are the things that we as a community continue to strive to make change for justice in? The parent resource for today is called The New Jim Crow: Mass Incarceration in an Age of Colorblindness by Michelle Alexander. A book to help us understand what is before us in this age of seeking change. Thank you for being a part of our summer Storytime series. Let's read about race together. And I hope that now you will enjoy the next freedom song that we have been including in each of these story times as well. Take care.